Today we're looking at some NHL trade rumors focusing on the Toronto Maple Leafs, Vancouver Canucks, and the Minnesota Wild. We also have a few more NHL award finalists that have been announced. We have lots of injury updates as the first round of the playoffs is now over. We're going to take a quick look at round 2 that begins this evening with a couple of very important game 1s going tonight. Plus we have some troubling news out of Toronto and Mitch Marner. We'll discuss all of that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and some rumors to take a look at here today. First up, I just want to quickly discuss the news that broke last night from Toronto police, confirmed by the Maple Leafs, that unfortunately Leafs young forward Mitch Marner was the victim of a carjacking in the Etobicoke area, I believe it was, outside of Toronto. I believe there was, 3 different people that were trying to steal the car, and they had weapons, including guns. So there's different reports out there. I'm not sure exactly 100% what went down. We may not know for some time because the Toronto police has asked Marner and the Leafs not to really discuss it due to an ongoing investigation outside of the fact that Mitch Marner is okay. That's the good news. I've seen reports that he had somebody with him. I've seen some people say it was his girlfriend or fiance. I've seen some people say it was just a friend. At the end of the day, to be honest, it doesn't matter too much who was with him. Everybody is fine, at least physically. I'm sure that it takes a toll mentally, though. Like, that's a traumatizing situation for sure. Very scary situation to be involved in. Apparently, Marner was reported to just letting them take the car, just say take it and go, basically. It's a really unfortunate situation. Had nothing to do with him being a Leaf or a hockey player. This is just a random act of violence in the Toronto area. It's believed that the ones who did this, wasn't targeting him because he's Mitch Marner. It had nothing to do with that. Unfortunately, you do see a lot of car thefts nowadays. A lot of these times, cars are stolen and shipped overseas. I don't really know how they pull it off, but I see it happen where I live too. It happens quite a bit. It's really kind of disturbing. So at least we know that Mitch is okay. He obviously didn't speak to the media today because it was kind of breakup day with the Leafs, with a lot of players and coach and GM and president all speaking to the media, which we'll get into a little bit later in the video. Marner was obviously excused from that for very obvious reasons. So certainly we need to offer, our thoughts are with him. Hope he's okay. But we also want to respect his privacy, and I hope nobody really badgers him about the situation media-wise to get more details, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter too much. Main thing is he's okay, but certainly a very scary and disturbing situation. Now, as I mentioned, round 2 begins tonight in the 2022 NHL Stanley Cup Playoffs. Round 1, of course, is over with as of Sunday. There was no games last night, which was a little weird after having such a good stretch there of really, big, important, entertaining games night after night after night, especially over the weekend with all those game 7s, including, some that went to overtime. But we did learn a lot as teams kind of clean out their lockers, and we have breakup days, so to speak. A lot of teams speak to the media for the last time before it's all, officially off-season mode here. Like with the LA Kings, we did learn that Victor Arvidsson's going to be having back surgery for a herniated disc, which is going to be a 3 to 5 month recovery. So he may or may not be ready for next season. It kind of depends on which, it's a big gap there. 3 to 5 months is a long time. If it's closer to 3 months and he's doing really good, maybe he'll be ready for camp. And if it's not, then it's hard to say. If you think about it, we're, middle of May now. So, June, July, August, September, October. Well, October kind of puts them, obviously missing camp in the first part of the season. So we'll have to see where that goes. But that's a big blow for him, and obviously may or may not be ready to start next season with LA. With the Florida Panthers, Mason Marchment is going to miss game 1 against the Lightning. They go tomorrow night. Marchment's still going to be considered day-to-day, so we don't know how much longer after that. They didn't really get into many details as to what's wrong with him. We do know, obviously, Casey DeSmith in Pittsburgh, after he left that double overtime game, he did end up having surgery, for core muscle. He did go into the fact that he had been battling a groin type issue for about 3 to 4 weeks before that, and tried his best to play through it, especially with Tristan Jarry being down. But he said he just felt everything in the hip and groin, everything's kind of locked up on him, and there's just no way he could continue. It was absolutely just impossible for him at that point. Freddie Anderson was expected back in round 2 here for the Hurricanes, which is still quite possible. but it's looking like not probable for game one. I know Rod Brindamore said he still hasn't practiced with the team, and until he practices, it's hard to put more of a timeline on things. He needs to get at least a couple of practices, you would think, under his belt before he plays. So I don't know if he's going to be available for game one. I'm going to say probably not. They'll probably continue to go with Antti Raanta for at least one, maybe 2 games to see. And really, depending on how well Ranta's playing, that will take the pressure off of rushing Anderson back, and hopefully he can come back and just maybe back up for a little bit first and kind of wait for the right opportunity to take the net from Raanta if it's deserved, of course. I mean, if he's still playing really hot or getting through the series, then maybe you don't bother. But he won't necessarily be going for game one. Tyler Seguin for the Dallas Stars did suffer a fractured foot in a game one against Calgary. So he was certainly dealing with that the rest of the series as well. So he'll be doing some healing this offseason. With the Maple Leafs, we did get confirmation late in the series with Tampa when there was that collision with Campbell. Jack Campbell did admit that he was hurt on it. He stayed in the game, clearly got his way through it. You're not going to come out of a game 6, game 7 elimination game, but he wouldn't really say what it was. But he did suffer some kind of injury on the play, which is not surprising. There was a lot of concern for him when it first happened. And Leon Draisaitl, I know people are concerned over an injury that he might be dealing with, but according to what the Oilers are saying, he will be available for game 1 in the Battle of Alberta, which also will go tomorrow evening. Some more news in the head coaching world of the NHL. No guarantees here, of course, but based on what the Dallas Stars are saying on their media availability on breakup day, it's hard to say what the future holds for Rick Bowness. He himself said he would probably prefer to be on 1-year contracts if he's going to continue at this point in his life and career. So I don't know if the Dallas is really going to want to do that or not. He was asked, about head coaching spots, assistant coaching, and he just said there'd likely be opportunities for him. Things are not clear. A lot of people think that Rick Bowness is going to retire, but it doesn't sound like that was an absolute certainty listening to the comments. So I'm thinking that it's going to probably boil down to what the Stars or another organization might be willing to offer. If they want to give him what he wants, let him go year to year, then maybe he sticks around. We'll have to see. In Winnipeg, Elliot Friedman reported today that the Winnipeg Jets have interviewed Barry Trotz. Of course, we speculated before, but many people have, that he would be a really good fit there with their coaching vacancy. Of course, he's from the province of Manitoba as well, so it would be a bit of a homecoming for him. That might be, we obviously don't know how we feel about that, but I would imagine it would be something he'd be interested in. It's also believed that other teams like the Flyers, Vegas, will be reaching out if they haven't already to speak with him, but we don't know what his interest is or where things lie. There have been some comments and some reports that he might be more interested in a management role, but I'm not really sure where he would go to get that or what the opportunity would be. There's nothing real obvious to me that jumps out, and the fact that he's already taking an interview for a head coaching job leads me to think that he's still obviously very interested and being behind the bench. On to some award news. We did get the finalists for the Masterton Trophy and the Selke Trophy. The Masterton actually came out yesterday, but with the videos that we put out, I never really get a chance to talk about it. But the finalists, as voted on here by the media, include Carey Price, Zdeno Chara, and Kevin Hayes are the 3 finalists. We had seen before who all the team representatives were going to be. All 32 teams do nominate a player for this award, and then it gets voted on to determine the finalists. So those are the 3 guys. A little bit surprised based on some of the other potential choices here. I think Kevin Hayes is probably the favorite, in my opinion. He dealt with a lot this year, including the loss of his brother and several injuries on his own right. So to me, I think he's the favorite. Carey Price went through a lot too. And he's certainly very deserving to be in the conversation, and he very well could win too, I guess. But to me, I kind of look at Price where he only came back at the very end of the season. I kind of thought it might make more sense if he was like next year's winner, assuming he comes back, plays, and overcomes everything he had to go through. That's generally how things go. You have a really rough year for whatever reason and stuff that's going on off the ice, injury-wise, health-wise, whatever. You battle through it, you come back, and it's typically the kind of story that gets recognized after. Yes, he did make it all the way back, but he only played a little bit. So I don't know how it's going to be viewed upon when it comes to the votes. But they're both very, interesting stories. Both very deserving to be in the conversation for sure. Zdeno Chara, I think it's only there because of how long he's played. Clearly, he's dedicated to hockey, which is part of what this trophy is about. No doubt about that. But I just thought there were some other stories of people and players that had to actually, fight and overcome more things, and he just played because he was older. I don't know. I love Chara. I respect him a ton. I'm not really sure I see how he became a finalist, but whatever. I guess that's just my take on that. The Selke Trophy, not a huge surprise there either. We get Elias Lindholm of the Calgary Flames, Barkov in Florida, Patrice Bergeron in Boston for the 11th consecutive year. Could this be his last year? Could he win it one more time? Most likely, he's probably fair to say he's the odds-on favorite. Maybe they rename this award the Bergeron Trophy after he's done and retired. It would make a lot of sense. He's won it a lot, and he's been in the conversation for so long, year after year after year. He is certainly, a model citizen when it comes to consistency and how to play the game the right way, the 200-foot way, the responsible way, and gets recognized year after year after year. Now on to the rumor section of the video. First up, I want to talk about the Vancouver Canucks. John Shannon, a longtime NHL reporter and insider, talking with Vancouver media, said that everything that he's hearing about what the Canucks might be doing this offseason indicate that they're very, very high on gaining salary cap flexibility, and that trading JT Miller seems to be right at the top of the list. So now, at one point, we were hearing a lot about Miller being shopped. Then things kind of settled down. A lot of reports were saying that no, they're going to wait and talk to him about an extension. It's going to depend on how that goes. Rutherford even made comments before saying that, that it's going to really boil down to contract extension talks. But essentially, the strategy here sounds like it might be to gain the Miller, I guess the value of Miller, to get a decent return, which would be better for the future is what they're thinking. Although it's hard to say, what they get back. It has to be something really good because Miller has been a real big piece of the puzzle there. But it sounds like they're going to also talk to teams if they want Miller, that they have to take another contract that maybe the Canucks aren't so fond of. But to me, that's going to diminish the return. So that's kind of what John Shannon indicates from what he's heard. Seems to be the Canucks strategy right now. So trading Miller, like normally, would be really high value, really good return. But if you're going to say, listen, you want Miller, you got to take OEL, or you got to take Tyler Myers, or I'm not sure who else they have there that they would really be not fond of the contract with per se. A couple of good examples there I think that they would certainly be willing to throw into that category. I know there seems to be mixed feelings on Connor Garland, but I don't think he's at a point with his contract and production that he'd really be considered a bad contract. I'm just not sure they felt it was a great fit. So to me, I don't know. I mean, I understand that it's a really good strategy in a sense to gain cap flexibility. So you lose Miller, but you might diminish his value by attaching a bad contract, and then from there you get the flexibility. But if you don't get the return and Miller's not there too, I don't know. Can they pull off a trade for Miller and get a really good return while attaching a bad contract? It just doesn't seem likely. When that happens, it's like teams are going to negotiate you hard, and Rutherford would know that, saying, well, listen, if you want us to take this other deal, we're not giving you, what you want, right? So we'll see, but indications are that JT Miller and a trade for him seems to be right at the top of their list. So we'll see. It seems like guys like Besser and Horvat are more likely to get re-signed and get extended here longer term. No word yet on any kind of negotiations on those fronts or anything yet, but there's certainly seems to be more of an appetite to sign them and keep them around. But let me know what your thoughts are on that strategy, at least from what it appears so from what John Shannon's hearing in Vancouver. When it comes to Minnesota, we heard a lot of comments from Bill Guerin. For one, they talked about the goaltending, that he'd love to have Fleury back with Talbot next year. I don't think that's going to happen. I think, I guess I shouldn't say I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be really, really, really difficult, and not sure that they're going to be able to. I think Fleury does have some interest there, but everything that's been talked about by a lot of other media members seem to indicate that Fleury does have a strong sense of maybe going back to Pittsburgh. So we'll see what happens on that front. When it comes to Kevin Fiala, Guerin did say that certainly they'd love to have Kevin back, but the deal has to make sense, and it was going to be challenging, and they would see what happens. So to me, that opens the door. At least he's being honest and realistic here with the media that it's going to be tough, and a trade is pretty likely. I mean, you got to also look at the fact that maybe Matt Dumba might be another cap casualty too. They're going to be in a real tough cap spot due to the Parise and Suter contract buyouts that kick in hardcore next year. That's why I keep thinking that keeping Fleury is going to be really challenging, if not impossible. Like, depending on what he's willing to play for, I just can't see having that much money tied up in goaltending. And clearly, like, to do that, they'd have to trade Fiala and Dumba for sure, and they would probably have to take back almost nothing in contracts. It would have to be futures. I mean, the Kevin Fiala trade talk is all about futures, picks, and prospects, is what we're hearing from all the different NHL reporters around the league that's been talking about this. So to me, I think, when it comes to Fiala, there was a lot of talk about Ottawa before. We've heard some things about the Islanders maybe being a good fit. The Devils were another team as well to reunite him and get him hooked up with fellow countryman Nico Hischier maybe as a winger for him. I don't know. Either way, the Wild are going to be an interesting team to watch. They definitely need to shed some salary or contracts in terms of not being able to re-sign Fiala. This was their year to really go for it before things got really tight, and unfortunately they fell short in the first round. Now, when it comes to the Leafs, we saw their breakup day as well. Media availability by Sheldon Keefe, bunch of players. Kyle Dubas, Brendan Shanahan spoke together at the podium. It sounds to me like there's not going to be any changes at the management or coaching level. Brendan Shanahan essentially gave Kyle Dubas and Sheldon Keefe both a vote of confidence. I'm not surprised by that. I know they had a heck of a regular season. Obviously, we're one goal short in Game 7 to advance to round 2 for the first time in 18 years. And you know what? As much as you can say that there's lots of great things about this year, but the end result was the same, right? So, when it comes to that, another comment and quote, I guess if you could say, from Shanahan was that we're not going to make changes just for the sake of making changes. Now, I've seen a big reaction to that on social media by a lot of Leaf fans, especially, indicating that, well, you can't not make changes. Like, it didn't work, right? But keep in mind here, he didn't say there wouldn't be changes. He just said that they're not going to make a change just for the sake of making a change. So then if you see that, you'd be like, well, we got to do something. You might as well trade Nylander. Like, they're not going to do that. It's just that simple. If they have a deal that they can end up discussing and it makes sense, and it involves a core member like a Nylander or a Jake Muzzin or whatever, and they feel like this would be good for us to change things up and make the team better, then yeah, I think they will do it. I mean, Dubas, of course, gave his vote of confidence to his group of players and the core players, which he made sure was not just a core 4. But when he was asked about trading the core 4, like, he did not explicitly say no. He just talked around it like he normally would. But in the past, you've heard him come out and actually be more blunt about, I'm not trading them. But he didn't say that this time. Now, I'm not saying he's going to, but I'm just saying, like, the way they worded things, to me, it says that they're going to explore things, but they understand that, certainly it didn't work. And the cap alone is going to dictate that some changes are going to have to be made. They may not be significant. I don't know. Like we talked about yesterday about Friedman and Merrick talking on their podcast, saying that could they do I guess Friedman worded it as the summer of Kawhi for Dubas, where maybe we see a significant trade of a big-time popular player for a different kind of big-time popular player, just to change things up. A lot of people talk about the top 6 and the forward group needing a little bit more sandpaper and grit, and like somebody who's really tough to play against to give that killer instinct that seems to be still not quite there yet. They did add some toughness, but it's all bottom 6 players that have that kind of role. Like Bunting does to some degree, but they need more. That's why I suggested yesterday maybe they do consider trading Nylander. I used Tyler Bertuzzi as an example. I'm not saying that'd be a 1-for-1 trade. I don't know that it would be. I can't see it right off the bat here, but at the same time, like, that was just an example because we know the Leafs had interest in him previously. So we'll have to see on that. But at the end of the day, the way they talked, it just sounds like there's not going to be any changes around coaching, GM, and that there likely will be some personnel changes, but it might not be significant, that they really believe in this group. I know Toronto Sun reporter Terry Koshan, he wrote that he feels that Peter Mrazek, Alex Kerfoot, and Justin Hall, in his opinion, are the most likely trade candidates that could be moved this offseason. Now, when it comes to Mrazek, we know why. We've talked about that. He's definitely a player that they're going to do everything they can to move on from. I have no doubt they will. He did not work out for them at all this year, and it really backfired for him to be part of the goaltending tandem. Justin Hall doesn't make a lot of money, but certainly, you know what? I think they're going to have an opportunity to promote Liljegren and Sandin. They're going to have an opportunity to bring back Giordano at a cheap contract. So with all that, they're really going to have room for Hall too? Probably not. If they can move him, that one makes sense to me. Alex Kerfoot's been a real good player for them. He's a bit of a utility knife. You can move him up if you have to. He can play third line. Good defensively, good, does a lot of things for you. And it might become a luxury that it's too expensive for them to have. That might be an issue that if they traded him, it would strictly because of cap management. I don't have nothing to do with not liking the player. But to me, like, if you look at the Lightning in that series, as much as the Leafs have improved and they had a pretty good group for your bottom six, the Lightning bottom six did outplay the Leaf bottom six, and the revamped third line for Tampa was a big impact with Nick Paul, Ross Colton, Brandon Hagel. The Leafs didn't really have that. They did have some contributions in the series from your lower bottom six players and middle six players, but not to that level. Like, your Pierre Engvals, your David Camps, Kasha, Simmons, Spezza, like all those guys, like they weren't bad, but Tampa was better. And that was, to me, was one of the big differences. Because if you look at their top players, I mean, you could argue that the Leafs top players probably outplayed the Lightning top players for the most part, like Matthews, Marner. Nylander had his moments where he was bad, but he also had his moments where he was really good. But that's just Nylander. Tavares wasn't great throughout the whole series, but he had his moments where he was really good too. Whereas the Lightning top guys like Kucherov wasn't great. Point was inconsistent. Picked it up towards the end and he got hurt. Stamkos wasn't at his top of his game either. So I think you could argue that might be the difference in the series there. Goaltending was pretty good too. I mean, Campbell really kept up with Vasilevsky. So, I'm not sure that they need to make, significant deep changes, but it really boils down to what's available for trade. They're going to have lots of conversations and see what happens. When it comes to Jack Campbell, no guarantees he's back. Listening to comments from him, he didn't really want to talk about contract. Don't blame him. Obviously, that's going to boil down to money. And it's going to boil down to if the Leafs can afford them. I mean, I think there's no doubt, there's interest on both sides. They want to make it work, but can they is the ultimate question here. But it's hard to say with certainty that there's a guarantee that he's back because of the tight cap situation and what he's willing to sign for, which we ultimately don't really know yet. I mean, we know at one point, Friedman reported that the Leafs were offering like a 2 or 3 year deal. I think it was 3 years around $275, and that was in season though. That was a little bit ago. And that was nowhere near enough to get it done. So we'll see when they reconvene. But going to be interesting with the Leafs. I do think that as much as the comments today said that they're not going to make change for the sake of making change, they will make some changes. I just think that reaction to those comments were by largely what we're seeing on social media. It's just people reacting without thinking it through. Like I said, they're not saying they're not making changes. They're just not going to overreact and make a change just to make a change. It has to make sense and feel like it makes the team better to execute. So we'll see what they come up with and how they proceed from here. Will they go back with the same core? It's possible, but I won't be shocked if they do pull off at least one trade that kind of changes the dynamic of this team a little bit. Maybe makes the remaining players that stay have a little bit less comfort, because I know there was a lot of talk today about, are the Leaf players getting comfortable that they keep getting these votes of confidence? They know they're not going to get moved. They've got their big contracts. Can that complacency kind of set in a little bit? And you know what? It's hard to say, right? You can't say no, but I don't think we can really say yes either. But sometimes it's not always bad to make things a little bit uncomfortable, put the pressure on a little bit, kind of help them ramp things up to maybe take it to the next level, which is what they need to finally get out of round one. So let me know what your thoughts are on that, as well as the other teams and rumors and news talked about in today's video, and we'll discuss further in the comment section. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.
Finalists.